magical practitioners of the British Isles who are called cunning folk. And that word itself in that instance dates back to Old English time and, around the turn of the first millennium, when somebody who was cunning or a cunning folk was somebody who had knowledge. It means to have knowledge. And the knowledge they're referring to is esoteric knowledge. So your cunning folk would be people who knew how to do, for lack of a better word, magic and astrology and divination and spirit work and
Wow.
things like that. So that's what the cunning relates to. And a lot of them were in Owen Davis's book, Popular Magic, which is about the British cunning folk. He says that a lot of the British cunning folk were artisans and tradesmen and farmers. So I read that and I underlined it, and I was like, well, that's like me. I'm a farmer who does magical work. So that's where the title comes from, and that's the knowledge I'm referring to, is the knowledge or the practice of the esoteric.
Welcome to the Healing with the Diamonds podcast. We are Larry and Kaylin Diamond, here to share the insights and practical wisdom of our journeys using ancestral wisdom to heal as a family. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Before making any lifestyle changes, consult your medical team. This is not medical advice. With that being said, let's start this episode. Welcome. Hello, everyone. I am Larry Diamond, half of Healing with the Diamonds. Kaylin Diamond, my amazing wife, is not here today, but who we do have here today is one of the most delightful independent scholars, farmers, polymaths. His name is Todd Elliott, and he has an unbelievable book that is coming out March 17th or 18th.
17th.
17th. The Cunning Farmer. It's a work of art, poetry, spiritualism, magic. Maybe one word to describe it. It's a work of enchantment. And we can talk about bringing enchantment back into the world. I met him through social media. There's still a lot great, amazing connection we can have. It's one of my favorite things, honestly, about the last 13 years. I healed in 2013. I use social media a lot to heal and meet people and find community. Todd is one of the people I found principally on Substack. And it was as my own journey into magic, and I'm very a novice at that, and astrology. I'm a novice, and I'm not sure. You follow people on Substack, and then that led to Todd. One thing leads to another. And I was immediately blown away by the sincerity and authenticity of his words, and that he was learning things that I was only beginning to learn about. And if there's any superpower I have, it's learning from others. Maybe Todd, the book, or no, I think it was a post that introduced you and your wife living in a bus. Can you first? I'm super interested. My studies were in geography, and I was looking at regenerative agriculture in a very holistic way, bringing in sacred ecology and deep ecology and philosophy and human environment interactions. But I never became a farmer in real life. So maybe let's start with that. How the Cunning Farmer, how you came to be a farmer first, which is a vocation and an avocation. And then we'll go from
Okay.
there.
Hey, Larry, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here with you. And I've enjoyed interacting with you on Substack. It's really finally great to sit down face to face with you across the ether, and to have finally made this connection. And to answer your question, I became a farmer because I have always been, as a child, I was very interested in nature. I was the kid that was catching bugs and snakes and running around the playground with a butterfly net when all the other kids were playing football. And as you can imagine, that might not have made me too popular. So I tended to spend a lot of time by myself and out in the woods in nature as much as I could. And as I got older and I made friends and connections, my friends and I started to go camping every weekend. I grew up in suburban Philadelphia and then moved to the city when I graduated from high school, and just got out of the city whenever I could every weekend. And finally, some friends of mine, one of my roommates who eventually became my partner, we uh, well, all of my roommates, we went down to Kentucky in 1995 for a week and spent a week at this wonderful, magical place in southern Kentucky on the Cumberland River, and met some really amazing and magical, fantastic people. And I was so impressed. When you're in your early 20s, I think I was 22. You're very impressionable, and I met some really far out people and who were living a really awesome lifestyle. They were back to the land, hippies, and they're still my friends to this day. So I was obviously very impacted by this. My father also was a bit of a farmer in the 90s and late 80s.
I was
He wasn't a
wondering.
farmer by we weren't
Yeah.
farmers by long tradition, but my dad had a farm in New York State, and I visited it a couple of times. About the same time I came down to Kentucky, and just spent a couple weeks up there with him, and just saw how that was kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to get to the country and get out of the city, get out of the noise. And so the following summer, 1996, about the summer solstice, one of my friends and we eventually got married. This was not the wonderful woman I'm with now, but it's another lady that I kind of, we kind of, we were partners at the time. But we kind of became apprentices to farmers, to homesteaders, to tobacco farmer, and we bought our own piece of land with a little bit of money. Back then, land was cheap. We bought 20 acres for $9,000. We cleared a little spot to put. Yeah, we cleared a little spot to move in a
My
school bus
gosh.
because one of my mentors said we were looking at building some kind of crazy hippie house, and he said, "Why don't you just move in a school bus?" And a fellow I knew had a school bus for $600, and you can't get a roof over your head for $600. It was a no brainer. So we bought this little school bus and moved it up, and it came with a propane refrigerator. So we hooked up some gas tanks to that, and we had a refrigerator and cleared out a couple little patches for gardens, and got started there. The opportunity to buy a farm came, and in the year 2000, we bought a farm, 23 acres of really good farmland, river bottom farmland. And we lived there for a couple of years. And then, we decided our paths led in different directions. And I moved up to Northern Kentucky where I am now with my partner now. And we have another farm and another piece of land and two kids. And long story short, that's kind of how I got started. I always enjoyed gardening. I always enjoyed working with plants. It became my life.
We, wow. It reminds me of the Terence McKenna quote, nature loves courage. So it seems like when you dream the impossible, quote unquote, impossible dream of being a farmer, the universe rearranged itself to meet those hippies and the school
Well,
bus. So
Terrence
well
was amazing.
done. And as I was reading your book, I was blown away. And it was one of those moments when I'm like, Caitlin, come here. Oh my God, you're not going to believe this. Apparently, I don't know, it seems like it's your current farm now, but I am a true fanboy, interestingly enough, if one can be a fanboy, of the great poet,
Yeah. Yeah. He's my
farmer,
name.
statesperson, Wendell Berry. Is that it? How does this happen? Now I can
He
tell
doesn't live too
Caitlin
far
I'm
away.
one
He
person
he
removed
doesn't live
from
too far
Wendell
away.
Berry.
We live on
Give him our
near the
best.
Kentucky River in Owen County on the eastern side, and he lives in Henry County on the western side. And I don't know, it's probably about 10 miles from here as the crow flies. He lives in Port Royal, and
Wow. Amazing. And I think his incredible poem about when we have completely lost our way, when we no longer know where to turn, I think that's kind of from 2020
yeah,
on in 2026. I think the collectives experiencing that, maybe our real work will begin. So that poem's given me
yeah, yeah.
a
He's
bit of
His work has been
real hope to,
a huge inspiration to me as well.
continuing
And
to now.
interestingly enough, I've met him on several occasions. I've had dinner with him, and his wife attended our wedding, my wife and I's wedding. His family is he's a family friend of my wife's family. But I once got to plant a tree in his yard, and that was a great experience. And when I got done planting the tree, he and Tanya, his wife, invited me in for breakfast to their house, and then he gave me an impromptu tour of his farm, which was pretty cool. Definitely a high point because I'm a fanboy too, for sure. I mean, an organic farmer in Kentucky, I think all of us are, pretty much.
Yes, and also a great work of his, Eating as an Agricultural Act. So maybe for the Healing with the Diamonds, and I definitely want to get into your um, book, and I want people to get that sense of enchantment and magic. But Eating as an Agricultural Act, the majority in relatively short amount of time, the US and other countries around the world went from mostly agrarian to via the Industrial Revolution and the rise of cities like Philadelphia. For better or worse, there's always nuance. So, if you're familiar with that poem, Eating as an Agricultural Act, and you live that, you and your family, I'm assuming that you're either eating things you grow yourselves, or bartering, or you know where your food comes from. But how important is that, kind of getting to your book, The Cunning Farmer? Do you feel mind, body, spirit, soul, all these different components of being human are connected? And you start your book with like the world tree. And I love our
Okay. Oh, cool.
image. This is the back of my phone, but our image is a tree healing with the diamond. So that that thought of Mother Earth, and, to me, all seven of my chakras, and then if you want to say Father Sky, Mother Earth, but that eating nourishing foods is versus, the ultra processed, things with 50 additives. How important, did you ever not eat whole real food like before your 20s? Or how important is eating as an agricultural act and our mind body health,
Well, I mean,
for also
obviously, eating
impacting
is the
our,
foundation of our health.
our
Eating a healthy
spiritual
diet
well being?
and eating foods that come from mineralized soils is super important for the basis of your health because you are what you eat, as the saying goes. To me, we try to eat as much as we can from the farm. It is February now and almost March, and our vegetable gardens are not producing right now. So what we have right now is potatoes and meat. So I eat potatoes and meat from the farm. We have cornmeal too from corn that we raise, but our vegetables are we're waiting for our vegetables to come back. We have some frozen peppers and things like that have lasted us from the fall, but our stores of fresh vegetables are getting low, so we do have to supplement at this time of year from organic stuff from the grocery store. Unfortunately, because the quality is even with the organic stuff is not anything like what we get in the summertime from here. Obviously, from the fresh vegetables we get right out of the field. We also have a CSA program where we bring fresh vegetables every week to a number of families and local families in Cincinnati and in Frankfort, Kentucky. And yeah, if anybody's out there in Frankfort, Kentucky or Cincinnati, feel free to reach out to us, follow the links, and join our CSA. We're open to new members, and we'd love to. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. If we were anywhere near, we did CSAs for quite a while. And can you explain the taste
Well,
difference
I had to buy
and
some
how that
kale at the grocery store,
relates
and that
to
killed me because we usually
the
have kale in the
soils and the
winter.
farming
Even in
practices?
the depths of winter, kale is so tough that it usually survives. But we had such cold winter that it even wiped out our kale. So we had to buy some kale, and I had to put lots of garlic in it. We still have garlic too. I had to put lots of garlic in it to up the taste of the grocery store, and it was organic kale. It just tasted I mean, nothing like our stuff that is out in the fresh air and nourished by rainwater. We use minimal irrigation. Sometimes we have to use irrigation, but we use minimal irrigation. We don't farm with plastic. We use minimal plastic. We don't use another reason we don't have any vegetables right now is that we don't cover the earth with high tunnels, with plastic high tunnels, which is a big thing in agriculture right now. And I understand why people do it to expand their markets in the wintertime. But for us, it just didn't seem like a good idea to cover the earth with plastic and to prevent the rain from reaching it and the air from reaching the plants, and the soil underneath there gets pretty weird and when you're just pumping in city water to keep it wet. So that's something we don't do, even though it makes us a little less seasonal or a little more dependent on the weather and the seasons. Yeah. So what else did you ask, Larry?
The ultra
Hmm.
processed food companies are really good at understanding human behavior. We as humans have a natural affinity and love for whole real food. So much so that the first artificial
Like sugar,
flavors
MSG.
mimicked nutrient density. So they used our love of real food against us, so to speak. Yeah, MSG has been going on, but they've perfected, if you can call perfection, used for whatever their aims are, manipulating our natural knowledge
Huh.
of nutrients. And a really good book on this, who I do know, is called Nourishment by Fred Provenza. So at the same time, the foods that work against our mind, body, spirit, soul health,
Mhm.
we're getting more artificially flavorful whole real foods because of soil depletion, we're getting less flavorful. So we always like to, at Healing
Mhm.
with
Sure
the
does.
Diamonds, to have people give grace to themselves for a very hard food environment. For instance, we we teach people how to have a nourishing relationship with food. And I go, look, guys, the universe isn't exactly fair. If you were living in 1826 and you went to a family party, all the protein would be 100% grass fed, all the dairy would be raw, there would be no pesticides, there would be no carrageenan and whatever food colors. So you do and you can learn to do the best you can. Never let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Like get that organic, you know, potatoes if you can, rather than a conventional, which may be GMO. But do the best you can. But I did not
Yeah, that's
know
how we
you
make
had
our
a
living.
CSA, and I'm
That's
absolutely
how we make our
going to
living.
get the links for
The
you.
writing
So
and the Substack is
so well done. And
I have some very
you
generous
mentioned, yeah,
supporters for the Substack, and that they're really awesome, and I appreciate that. But the way we make our living is through the CSA. It's by raising. We have some cattle here, not very many, but we sell a little bit of meat and mostly vegetables of all kinds. And I've been doing a CSA. This is my 25th year of doing a CSA.
fantastic. We did CSAs for a while. I think, ironically, and I'm no one's hero, I had to get severe IBS and literally at, you know, pretty darn sick before, and it was really pain to purpose. It was, and then I just had, I took the plunge, like Terrence said. I'm like, I'm sick anyway.
Yeah,
Why don't I make all my own decisions on how to heal and what is healthy in food? And if I die, I die. If I heal, I heal. So in a way, that was my version of, embracing my own inner cunning nutritionist and cunning doctor, so to speak, that I had the cunningness
sure.
within me,
I bet
not
you did
not the
heal. I
current
bet you did get better
scientific
for
medical
taking
field.
care
So
to eat the
in a
right
way, that
living
was my
foods and things
version
like
of being
that.
a cunning farmer. Absolutely. Yeah. And one more word, cunning. You were mentioning eating seasonally. And that, I'm sure, is an uninterrupted tradition. I make the point to a lot of my health coaching clients that if you look at the history of bananas in the US, I think it was 1906, the first banana didn't even get here, shortly over 100 years ago. So no one was eating fruit. year round, and it just a few generations back. So that connection to the land and observing nature, if we observe nature, we can sometimes get the wisdom of, say, foxes and badgers and coyotes and the plants themselves. So what does
Well, the
the
reason I
word
picked the word
cunning
cunning
mean
was
to you,
to
both
reference the
ancestrally and living
traditional
embodied as a
magical
cunning
practitioners,
human, let's say?
folk magical practitioners of the British Isles, who are called cunning folk. And that word itself in that instance dates back to Old English time, in around the turn of the first millennium, when somebody who was cunning, or a cunning folk, was somebody who had knowledge. It means to have knowledge, and the knowledge they're referring to is esoteric knowledge. So your cunning folk would be people who knew how to do, for lack of a better word, magic and astrology and divination and spirit work and
Wow.
things like that. So that's what the cunning relates to. And a lot of them were in Owen Davis's book Popular Magic, which is about the British cunning folk. He says that a lot of the British cunning folk were artisans and tradesmen and farmers. So I read that and I underlined it, and I was like, well, that's like me. I'm a farmer who does magical work. So that's where the title comes from, and that's the knowledge I'm referring to, is the knowledge or the practice of the esoteric. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it's a great answer, and I want to say one of the things I'm very much enjoying about Todd's book. Oh yeah, it's hard. There's beautiful pictures everywhere. So my chance of opening up 2 pages, but I really love that the book in and of itself is absolutely worth the purchase price, but it can also lead people you are acknowledging one of my core sayings that I came up with myself is learn from everyone, follow no one. And I think of it as having two hands. We have a giving hand and a receiving hand, and it is sacred to both give, but it's also sacred to receive. And none of us are ever alone. And we
Hmm.
do come from, I love the word cunning, from an unbroken lineage of cunning folks. So I really resonate with that word. So thank you. One word that I had to get comfortable with, and some of our listeners, I'm sure, maybe
Absolutely.
haven't
So
heard the word much or could be intimidated by it because there's words are very powerful. They're a big part of magic, spelling. And, I don't know if J.K. Rowling knew about hand gestures and spelling in her work, but the word esoteric, and then we can get into the power of words and hand gestures and symbols. But can you explain the word esoteric, how you would explain it, and kind of
sure.
keep the magic of the word, but demystify
Esoteric
and
is a
maybe
word that immediately
evil
stands in
it in some way?
contrast
I
with
don't
its
want to say
opposite,
that
which is
it's known as an
exoteric.
evil
So
word,
the
but it
exoteric
can
is the
be an
outer teaching of
intimidating word
something,
to people.
and the esoteric is the inner teaching. So it's kind of like the word occult, which simply means hidden. That's all it means, but it refers to it, like the occult. It refers to something that is not out in the open. If a teacher, say the Buddha or somebody like that, not just had a message for the masses, right? He would say, you have to do this and this and this. I don't know Buddhism well enough to. I mean, I know Buddhism okay, but uh, I don't know which is the esoteric. Okay, let's say the exoteric teaching is that you have to meditate and devote yourself to contemplation, and you have to free yourself from desires. So that's for everybody. He says, everybody, you got to do good. You've got to give to the poor. You've got to practice meditation. You have to worship, and you have to do your devotions with the community and the sangha. But the esoteric teaching would be, say, the breathing exercises and the mantras and the things that were a little more difficult for your average practitioner to practice. So it's more like the magical, mystical stuff at the core of the religion. So if there's an esoteric religion, whether it's Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism or Islam, the inner teaching is the thing that's not for the masses, that's communicated by teacher to student, word of mouth, in an inner circle, by books that are generally not read, like the Gnostic Gospels are with Christianity. The stuff you hear in church, in Sunday school, that's the esoteric. But the stuff you read in the Gnostic Gospels, that's the esoteric. So I hope that explained
Yep.
it. It's the secret teaching, the inner teachings.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I want to, and I'm just laughing because I never ever read my personal journey. It's funny.
Yeah,
A word of the esoteric, the Bible, but the first
esoteric.
gospel I purchased was Gospel of Thomas. So I kind of skipped and I went straight to the Gospel of Thomas, which is super poetic for me. But and before we get, I wanted to touch on the word occult because, in terms of hidden, and it's something that I've recently been contemplating and hearing from other people, and it relates to a magical practice. And I want you, as a magician, I want your insight on this. So I heard people saying in virtually every esoteric tradition that the universe kind of, it's not trying to hide. No one's trying to hide occult wisdom. There's no
Mm.
conspiracy, source conspiracy of hiding anything per se, but the universe itself almost creates guardrails to that it's an individual practice that we get deeper and deeper with. And the universe, I don't intend, almost wants us, almost put, doesn't want us to go too fast. And that if people kind of take, let's say, Aleister Crowley and want to go too fast and unlock maybe theurgy before. So, what about that? There's nothing actually hidden to any of us, but there's kind of these inherent guardrails, and
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
don't know
think
how to phrase it.
occult
Wants
refers
the
to
universe
things that are not
requires that
apparent
we
to the five
do
senses. I mean, when we
the
when we talk
actual
astrology is
practices to
occultism,
unlock deeper understandings.
energy healing is occultism, all sorts of divination are. It's just refers to the fact that there's forces operating underneath the reality of manifestation and hidden from our physical senses that do affect reality as we know it. So occultism is simply the study of the hidden forces. And yes, I think that it is dangerous for some people to fool around with this stuff. And I think that there are guardrails. And I think that's why some of these teachings were esoteric, because it's not for the masses. Even you don't want to publish all the dangerous stuff out there for everybody for the foolish and the foolhardy and the I don't know, people that aren't ready for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all out there now with the internet. It's all out there. You can find all the dangerous
Ambitious,
stuff and all
the,
the secret
the
stuff.
ambitious
I mean,
ego
and not know
mind,
what to do with it. And I
ego
think that
has
I
its
think the
place, but it needs to
the
be
s-
mastered.
good thing is, despite what people are saying, magic's actually. I mean, we're all doing magic all the time on one level. I mean, our thoughts are magic, and we're always manifesting things. But on the other level, it's like Luke Skywalker trying to lift the X-wing fighter out of the mud in one of the Star Wars movies. You can't just go and do that. It's harder than it looks. And if you don't practice and you don't study and you don't devote yourself, making things manifest is not really that easy. So that's kind of the good thing too, is that even though the secrets are all out there for anybody to find, the foolish people probably won't be able to do that much harm because they won't devote themselves to the study that's necessary to get good at that stuff. You can pull a grimoire out and try to summon a powerful spirit, but if you don't devote yourself to the practice and do it the right way, nothing will probably happen. I mean, I hear all these horror stories, and I don't know if I believe them, but I hear horror stories about people playing with a Ouija board and summoning an evil spirit. I was like, "Well, it's not that easy." No, I mean, maybe it is for some. If I guess if the wrong person does it
Yeah,
and it naturally has a talent for it, they might they might get into trouble. But I don't think I think that natural talent is pretty rare, and I think most people who fool around with a Ouija board are probably going
yeah.
to be okay. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to do that. I actually don't use that method. I never have, or not since I was a teenager. I the results we got from it were pretty fake. I'm sure my one of my friends was manipulating the thing the whole time. Yeah.
There
Just
you go.
saying that the dangers of magic are overblown. It's a lot safer than people say unless you have natural talent. You might not know you have natural talent until you start doing it. So you should be careful. But the practices require meditation, concentration, discipline. I mean, it's just like martial arts. It requires practice, contemplation, discipline, dedication, and devotion. A lot of D's in there, and you're not going to just wing it and have something amazing happen or scary or dangerous,
Hmm.
unless you are Harry Potter. You know, unless you are Harry Potter. Harry Potter, he had a knack for it. I'm not Harry Potter.
I love that. I love that. Right. Um, but and I really like the quote. I always get his name wrong, but I love James and the Giant Peach Tree and Roald Dahl. And looking to
Hmm.
me, the world has always been magical. Existence has been magical. Looking at the world through glittering eyes, most children live in a more magical than, let's say, a mundane world. And then we tend to grow out of it. I chose to never grow up, although I had detours here and there, demystifying magic. And like you said, our bodies are magic. And
Hmm.
if each of our cells was the size of the sun, and we have trillions and trillions of cells, they would each be more electric.
Hmm.
We talked about this a little bit, the electric sun theory, but we're literally, each of us is literally a trillion suns. And so I do live life as
Yeah, yeah.
everything is magical, and not to the point. My wife and I laugh about this, and I'm just being irreverent here, doing magical shit, but also doing the laundry. And everyone in this world has to do some of that balance. And I think it makes the magical things actually more magical that I'm also doing the laundry and cooking meals, which is magic to me. And, you know, helping our daughter with homework and paying bills, how much I don't like those, but it
Yeah, definitely.
doesn't take away from my existence because I wake up with a profound sense of awe. And to me, that sense of awe and wonder is kind of the core of my magic, if that makes sense. So what does the word magic mean to you? And I I'm really want to get to Platoism. This isn't what I'm asking you now, but Hermeticism and the concept of daemons and of course astrology, maybe those four things, because I think they're all worthy of talking. But first, when you use the word magic and somebody's
I think every book on magic has a definition of magic in the beginning. It's important to define your terms. So, Aleister Crowley defined magic as this art and science of causing change in conformity with the will. And I think that's great, but it's a little broad because it's like he said in Magic and Theory and Practice, every intentional act is a magical act. So if I put myself to picking up this cup here, that's a magical act. And I think it's so broad because I think what we're really talking about when we talk about magic is we're talking about
Hmm.
causing change in accordance with the will by occult or supernatural means. Because just doing an intentional act using physical means is like driving a nail with a hammer, for instance, or getting inside your car and driving away. That's not magic. That's just so broad. I think he was trying to say that we do magic all the time, but I think it's really when you're using hidden chains of causality or where the mechanism of causation is not visible, or maybe not even existent. Like it's using the power of synchronicity, the things that connect the universe together across different parts invisibly. That using those invisible connections, that's magic. Yeah, it's using the invisible connection. Sure.
I'm thinking of the word plasma. Maybe interacting with plasma or the field, the Tao, as the Taoists would say, that's what I'm feeling from your words. And I love the word intent, because when we were talking about not being able to do great mischief or maybe being more natural like Harry, I find that and you used the word will with Aleister Crowley, that plasma ether. Do you use ether with an E or an A? But plasma and ether are rarely talked about. And I just really came across the word plasma. It was hidden from me, even though it's out there.
Okay.
And I'm really resonating with
Plasma,
plasma
yeah,
now.
is there's solid, there's liquid, there's gas, and then there's plasma, right? It's the fourth state of matter. Is that what we're talking about in the physical sense? Okay, like what, like lightning or the surface of the sun or something like that, or like glowing clouds of gas out in the galaxy. It's like heated. Yeah, I'm familiar with that concept in physics. I don't really know about it in metaphysics, but ether is a thing that was postulated by 19th century science that was the fifth element, was something that linked things together. It was a field that went through all time and space, as far as I understand, and it was sort of metaphysical. But in the old sense, ether was the fifth element. So there's earth, air, fire, and water, and then ether was the fifth element, and that's what people like Aristotle believed that the sun and the stars were made out of. They were right; they are made out of plasma, right? But the ancients believed that
Yeah.
everything outside of the reason the sky is blue is because it's ether. Ether, the blue of the sky is the color of ether. That's what the ancients believed, and then they also believed that it was the fifth element. They associated with spirit because everybody's familiar with the pentagram and the 5 points of the pentagram. The upper point is this point of spirit. Pneuma, which was the Greek word for spirit, is like the linking principle between the four elements of physical matter and the soul. So in ancient philosophy, you had soul or psyche in Greek, which is immaterial, right? It's an immaterial reality. And then you have physical reality. And in order for those two things to touch, like say in a living being, for a living being to be ensouled, it also had to have a spirit. So the spirit and soul are distinct and they're linked. Spirit and matter, soul and matter are distinct and they're linked by spirit. So it was like this third property that would link matter and soul. It means a lot of things. And then I've seen some authors that use spirit where I use soul and soul where I use spirit. Like I think I try to go with Neoplatonism, but I think Theosophy and the whole tradition following Theosophy uses spirit to mean the immaterial principle and soul to mean the linking principle. So different people mean different things, and you almost have to define what sense you're using it in before you can have a conversation. But for me, and I try to go
Mm.
with traditional philosophy and Western esotericism as I understand it, and somebody might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but spirit, which is spiritus in Latin, which is pneuma in Greek, all those words also mean breath and air, is the thing that brings soul into the physical. So soul like a property of the universe, like the world soul. And then we each have our own connection to that through our spirit. I think that's roughly it. But they equated this with breath. So the word for spirit in several major languages is the same as the word for breath. As I just said, in Latin it's spiritus, in Greek it's pneuma, in Hebrew it's roch, I believe. And that's the thing that gives you life. It's your breath that comes into you through the air, and you're ensouled. So when we do astrology, right, we look at your natal chart and look at your natal chart, and we don't know when your soul came into your body, but we know when your spirit came into your body. That's when you took your first breath right after you were born. So that's why we do a natal chart for the moment you were born. We don't try to figure out. I guess some ancient astrologers would try to figure out when you were conceived, which is really a difficult thing to do. But we can all figure out when you were for most people, we can figure out when you were born, when the spirit came into your body.
I love that. What a natural segue. And that's been in my limited understanding of astrology. I love that. Some of the most common things, in terms of ether. And so the universe is alive. It's not this 99% ethers everywhere, and
Yeah.
we can survive infinitely longer at the simplest level, a way to kind of connect in a way like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Is creating the universe moment to moment. He's like, it is sending forth its energy into the universe moment to moment, and that if it were to be cut off for even a moment, the universe would cease to exist. That we're constantly taking in the divine radiance, and that's what keeps us in being and keeps everything in being in life. And if we're to be cut off for even an instant, everything would cease to exist. And I think that's sort of beautiful. If we were cut off from life itself, we can't live, like you said, but if we can go for a while without food, maybe a little while without water, and maybe a few minutes without air, but without the power of life itself that we receive from the Creator, we're nothing.
Wow, I love that. Moment of our birth and, ensouled. I love that spirit and ensouledness. And I'm really learning a lot from
Mhm.
Eileen Day McCusack and her wonderful books, Electric Body, Electric Health, and Biofields. And I'm building this wonderful synergy as you do. And I love pattern making, and I see commonalities. And oh yeah, they had this insight, and it's a modern insight, and it's an ancient insight. And isn't that isn't that cool? And I'm a big fan of somebody named John Lamb Lash, who also brings in astrology. So the moment of our birth, and I'm wondering, I've had to wrap my head around all these cesarean births and maybe like a hospital, but
That's interesting.
I'm a water sign. Wife is a water sign, and my mom. So the three people or the two people souls
Mm.
closest to me were all water signs. Yeah, I always and different. So we have Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio among the three of us. So my wife and I are both what's known as, empaths, highly sensitive people. And that's worked well for us. We've helped each other evolve and, create boundaries and keep our warmth and empathy. So it's been a great marriage. So the time that we're born, and also, I'm really curious about the location. Like, I was born in LA. I don't know my exact time. Choosing our parents, we can go so many, but what is the time and these planets? What is that imbuing a soul with? How is that impacting our personality, our purpose, like connecting with our daemons or guiding spirits that actually we agreed to our purpose. So are we choosing our time of birth, our place of birth, via that conversations with our daemons before we incarnate? Sorry, I'm confused about astrology.
Yeah, and we don't really exactly know how it works, but that is a myth. I mean myth in the sense of a sacred teaching story rather than in a sense of the story that's not true. The difference. I don't use when I use myth. I don't usually use it in the sense that modern people use it as something that's a lie. I use it in the sense of a sacred story that explains something that's a deep spiritual concept. So the idea that our soul comes from the divine, the source, which is outside but yet within the cosmos, and it emanates from the source at the time of our birth, and it flows down through the various layers of the cosmos that are the planetary spheres, and what position it finds the planets in influences what quality they pick up from that planet. For instance, if you're Saturn, if you, when it, your soul descends into the sphere of Saturn, and Saturn is in Capricorn, you'll get a very strong Saturnian imprint on your life, and you'll be, perhaps more conservative, hardworking, enduring. And then, well, it passes through Jupiter. If Jupiter's in one of its signs where it's powerful, you get a powerful Jupiter and a powerful Mars, and et cetera, et cetera. Or you might get a weaker or more afflicted, depending on the position of the planet at your birth, and that puts an imprint on your soul. Or the ancient Hermetic teachers of Egypt, they believed that there were actually your soul was emanated from the divine, um, relatively free of influences, and it would pick up influences from spirits, from daimons that were on duty, ready to link, to kind of grab hold of your soul in almost a sinister way. We were talking about the ancient Hermetic teachings and how they thought there were daimons from the planets on duty at the moment of our birth, and whatever combination we received, that put an imprint on our personality, and we carried that with us for our lives. And that to be to be to grow spiritually was to release ourselves from the hold that those diamonds had over us, which is a little personal daimon that was our guardian spirit or our guide in our life. Yeah. Yeah, but there's also influences you get from the plants that are, for better or worse, they're what contribute to your personality in the myth. And all these are just different views. The Hermetic view is distinct from the Neoplatonic view. They weren't the same schools, but they did have a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
You can read Plato's Timaeus and get a different take on the last chapter. No, it's the last chapter of the Republic. Excuse me, the myth of error, and you can get a different take on the daimon there than you get from the Hermetic books. But yeah, the idea that we have a daimon that guides us through life, but it also guides us through to and through all of our difficult experiences as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I've felt that, and it's funny. I routinely, before I knew the concept of chi, I've always been able, when right now I'm feeling chi, and I could always feel people staring at me in the back of my head. And Rupert Sheldrake, and it's so interesting. This is something that I observe
Have
that's
you ever
as
tried that
real as
experiment? It's
gravity.
where you're driving your car and you look at the car, you're passing cars, and you look at the driver that you're about to pass, and they almost always turn around and look at you. If you look at the back of their head, they'll almost always turn and make eye contact, almost always. But beyond your own experience of being stared at, because I think a lot of us can feel that, but you can see that almost everybody can feel it, whether they're aware of it or not. They don't know what makes them turn around, but they definitely know when your when your eye hits their energy field. Mhm.
And when I read something of truth or I get these electric tingles, coming,
I
it's
like
so I phrase it as I personally have scientific validation for mysticism being real. So I call what I do scientific mysticism. And I'm really encouraged that I have another term, the word woo, WOO. My term is, if it isn't woo, is it even true? And what I the hope I have for humanity is I really feel wisdom and hopefully enchantment. Who knows? It's above my pay grade. I'm one corner of the universe, as Aldous Huxley. I'm doing my best to live in heart mind coherence, connect with my higher self and potential. You're doing that with farming and your wonderful work on Substack and with your book. I do it, in social media and being a healer, healing with the diamonds, this podcast. But if enough of us are
I have a 15-year-old too.
working on our heart mind coherence and living in love, then I think Gaia will heal and humanity will heal. And,
Brother,
you know, we can't get too frustrated.
back around, and if 4 or 5 years later, my mom and I were really good friends. So my 15-year-old's the same way, but my 8-year-old, he's the wizard, and he'll probably think we're full of it when he's 15 too.
Yes.
That's the nature of the thing, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you for that reminder because I can remember our 8-year-old climbing trees.
Mm.
Now we have to almost cajole her to get outside. Yeah, so that's awesome. But then the Hermetic principles, so that actually it was so interesting. I saw a video on the Hermetic principles and all seven made intuitive sense to me. Now, I will say that the hardest one for me to grasp was that everything is mental. But can you go over? But I've since, and it's okay, it is, we don't have to, like, we have a health coaching program that includes this 12-week course. So we tell people, relax, you're going to get better and better at this stuff. But the Hermetic principles we were talking before, and they're in your book, as kind of as I understand it, the Templars kind of brought back the Corpus Hermetic.
And it's not the same as the ancient Hermetic teachings. I think it's in, and I'm not gonna say it's not real or anything like that. I think it was written in a Hermetic spirit. I read them. It's a while ago though. I'm not as familiar with that as the Corpus Hermeticum. But I'm talking about. I don't know if you this the camera things. The camera reverses things, so you can't.
Oh,
Can you read that? Is that okay? And those are some good
interesting.
books on. This one's really expensive. Anyway, there's some good books on this one's Hermetic Spirituality and the Historical Imagination by Walter Hanegraaff, Wouter Hanegraaff, and then this one's the Corpus Hermeticum, translated by Brian Copenhaver, and they're based on the Hermetic religion of late antiquity in Egypt.
Yeah.
Religion, and it was kind of coexisting with early Christianity, and also with Greek philosophy. So it blended a lot of Platonic philosophy and Aristotelian philosophy in with traditional Egyptian teachings. But I think it's profound, and it doesn't really lay out. It's a series of 20 tractates, and it doesn't really, the Corpus Hermeticum, and it doesn't really lay out a coherent doctrine with 7 teachings, but it does lay out a program, an initiatory program. There's a fellow named David Litwa who just published a new translation of the Corpus Hermeticum, and he does put the tractates in order, so you can read them in order, and because he thinks they were handed out to initiates in a grade system. So the first degree you would get one of these basic texts, and then as they got more advanced, you would get the more advanced texts. And what you're talking about here is this is the what was brought to Rome, or to Florence, after the Ottoman Turks captured Byzantium, and a lot of manuscripts from the monasteries in Byzantium were loaded into boats and taken to Italy in about 1490 something. And the original Greek texts for this were brought and translated by Marsilio Ficino in the 1490s. And he was working on translating the works of Plato at the time, because they had come in a little earlier on another boat. I think it was Cosimo de' Medici was his patron, and he said when they found out the Hermetic tracts were in the boats, had just gotten unloaded, he told Marsilio Ficino to stop with Plato, because this was more important than Plato, because they thought they were older than Plato. And for the Renaissance Italian people, that they believed the older the better, and they thought this was more ancient and closer to the source. It's not more ancient than Plato. It's about 700 years later or so, 500 to 700 years later, because they were written over a couple centuries. But they're pretty profound. The other book, the Hanegraaff book, he sort of tells you about their history and about where they were written and the social context they were written in, and analyzes them. And he does his own translations, and some of his translations are just incredible, just really beautiful stuff about the source and divine love and spiritual growth and reincarnation, and just amazing teachings from ancient Egypt that come down to us by just a historical accident, that they managed to survive being burned, and that they got copied enough in the Middle Ages, because if you have a manuscript, a parchment manuscript sitting in a library, if somebody doesn't copy the manuscript every several generations, the manuscripts actually fall apart. So people had to be anything that comes down to us from ancient times, people had to be sufficiently interested in it to copy it. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of inadvertent or purposeful censorship that happened that way. Like we don't have a lot of texts from ancient Greece and ancient Egypt were lost because they were somehow not acceptable to the Christian monks that were copying them. But these texts were obviously important enough to the monks that they copied them, and we managed to get a hold of some copies. Oh my gosh, you can get some Yeah.
That is beautiful. And my brain was going, I have a local half price
Yeah.
used books that sometimes surprises me. And then, and then up the road, a little wonderful town. If anyone gets to Central Texas between Austin and Waco, definitely go to a little town called Salado. There's a used bookstore called,
No, you
well, antique store called Fletcher's.
that
You're
chapter going on. I could any of those chapters could have made a whole book in and of itself, really. And there's so much more to be said about that. So please look through the bibliography if you get a hold of the book, and any of those quotes in there that grab you, check them out. Check out the books that they come from. A lot of them are available online too, if you know where to look. A lot of the texts I quote are. Go ahead.
it yeah, it's just it's a wonderful time. Your book gives me a lot of hope. You know, we're recording this in 2026, and but I think it the phrase just popped. It's a very magical time to be alive. It really is. Uh, like you said, things are not hidden anymore. And I'm 60 now, and you know, I spent over 20 years between 270 and over 350 pounds, no energy, depressed, lethargic. I'm healthier now at 60 than I personally was at 16. And a lot of that came through my own scholarship, being an independent scholar. And I'm old enough that when I was doing my master's work, I had to go to the stacks and the microfiche, which, you know, was it's now on our these devices, we can literally do multiple
Me
PhDs
too.
if we want to. So there's great opportunity, and it takes that will. Are we going to use it? And we just got two cats, and I love cat videos. And there's a place for, you know, crazy cat videos, but there's also a place for doing whatever each of us considers sacred work. And I think one of the themes of your book is making the world sacred again, whatever that. And I'm personally spiritual, not religious. I really jive with Taoism, but I also consider myself a very sacred human being. So you've been very generous with your time. How what hope would you want to give to people that are maybe reeling, like just discovering the sacred, maybe the right hemisphere?
Sacred. And I think we here in the West, we especially people of European extraction tended to lose that. Not everybody, but our culture has lost it. We treat the land as if it were a pile of dirt and rocks, and we look at a forest and we see board feet. We look at we look at the earth and we see bushels per acre. We look at the rocks and the mineral life as we can see like what ores we can extract to make into cars and aluminum cans and all the crap that we need for industry. And what we're actually doing is destroying the ecosystem, destroying the mother that gives us life. And I honestly don't think we'll ever destroy her. I think she's greater and older and more powerful than we are. And what we're actually destroying is our umbilical cord to life. If we cut off the physical, the ability of the earth to support us, she will regenerate. You know, this earth was hit by a cataclysmic meteor at Chicxulub in the Yucatan that destroyed all of the dinosaurs and everything. Most things were wiped out. And what we're doing now, us humans, with our industrial civilization, could easily be that destructive. Mother Earth came back. She came back in a different form and different kinds of life. Took over, including our ancestors, the little mammals, and she could do it again. And we this earth is going to be here for billions or more years. I think the only things that we're imperiling is all the things that are all that us and all of our relatives who are crawling on the surface of this earth just like we are trying to make a living. And yeah, I think we need to go back and have some sort of religious spiritual revival in which we think that the earth is sacred and the cosmos is sacred, and that all the animals and plants here have a sacred part, a role to perform as our family. And Yeah, that's what I it was a major theme of this, and magic for me. Yeah. Oh, for the same mother. Yeah. And magic for me is not just getting what you want from, it's not like just getting what you want. It's using it's realizing that the earth is and the cosmos as a whole, everything is connected and everything's part of one consciousness, and using the connections of that one consciousness to make things happen for the good of all. I don't think you should be using it just for your own good. You should be using it for the good of all.
We are brothers from the same mother, Gaia Sophia. Yeah, yeah.
I remember.
A great quote on that from Tolkien was when Sam got the ring. So Sam had to carry the ring, and he realized it's such a great quote, and it relates to you and farming. And that was talking about magic. That was magical. I haven't become a farmer yet, but I did dedicate, I could have been any field, but I dedicated my studies to regenerative agriculture. Somehow I had this passion that, if you didn't know, at the university level, geography is so broad. It's a natural philosophy. It's basically human environment interactions. So I was studying Aldo Leopold and Wendell Berry and Sir Albert Howard and all of those. But when Sam Wise, the word wise, Sam Wise gets the ring, he says he realized that what he wanted was a garden big enough to work with his hands and not to command other people. And so maybe Sam really was the wisest member of the fellowship. So he didn't he just wanted a good earth, as Pearl Buck would say. He wanted the good earth. So I when I found out about your book on
Yeah.
Substack, my daemon knew that I needed the book. So I would encourage everyone to get Todd's book that is looking for sacredness, is looking for a really good introduction to magic in these times where magic is making a comeback, where the sacred is making a comeback. I couldn't think of a better book to guide anyone than Todd's book. So thank you for having it come out in March 2026.
Well, I
I'm
would
going to
love to have
say
you. That'd
that
be great.
divine timing, perfect timing. Yeah. Um, so I could talk to you for hours, but you're a farmer. You got it.
Oh, that'd be cool. We'd love to have you.
I love that. Give my best to your wife and your two boys. And if we're ever, thank you. If we're ever in Kentucky, and we'd we'd love to visit your place for sure.
Prayer book. My grandfather was an Episcopal priest, and I have his prayer book, and he has that stuffed in here somewhere. And every now and then I read it, and because when I'm having a, some being a dad's not easy, and being a parent's not easy, and you think you can, but at some point you just have to. I can't find it. I know it's in here somewhere, but you're familiar with it, so yeah. And it though I know it's stuffed in this book. Yep, it is. Yeah, yeah. And they're our greatest teachers. My wife always says our children are our greatest teachers as well.
Yes. Yep. Yep. It's a good way to overcome our ego and learn compassion being a parent for sure. Yep. They're the universe's longing itself. They do not belong to you.